Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shells, death slaves, orcs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks, scientists. I'm useful idiot. Welcome, and let's talk about the onslaught that continues on the entire COVID narrative. And it's getting more and more interesting all the time because now we have government sources that are coming out, and the entire COVID narrative is unraveling in a big way. And I did a pretty big video quite a few months ago about accounts from scientists all over the globe pointing out all the problems with the COVID vaccine and the COVID narrative. And we're seeing a lot more of that. We're seeing scientists now coming out and talking about the connection between the vaccines and dementia and Alzheimer's. We're seeing connections with the vaccine with neurological deaths in young people. And then we're seeing a lot of reports coming out about mental health issues on top of everything else that's happened. 74% of deaths during the last 4 years are now being linked to the vaccine. The excess death rate for this last 4 year period has skyrocketed, and ever since 2020. And these deaths are not COVID deaths; they're deaths from the vaccine. So the connections are being made. And another report just came out recently that you have 112,000% greater risk of blood clots and strokes from the vaccine than you do from flu shots. And we've already seen very disturbing reports coming out from morticians all over the globe talking about seeing these blood clots like they've never seen before. They're really unprecedented. And the only connection that can be made is not COVID, it's from the vaccines. And this goes along with the rate of all the young people that are having heart attacks all over the globe as well, just unmistakably connected to the vaccine. And a couple things that happened recently show that a lot of the challenge to the vaccines and their health risks is now being supported by more and more scientists on a much larger scale. And also a lot of things coming out about using the government's own statistics. So it's coming back to haunt them. So one story that emerged recently is that there's a petition going around in the UK that 2,000 scientists have signed on to immediately suspend all vaccines. And one of the things that's interesting to me about that is the number of scientists supposedly that were on board with the safety of the vaccines and all the COVID protocols, and yet now we're having all the scientists who were ignored or ostracized and sidelined during the COVID so-called pandemic. Now all the scientists that were part of the fringe are now coming out in the thousands on a global scale, and particularly in Japan, for example. There's been a lot of outspoken giants in the medical field that have come out against the COVID vaccine. But another one that just came out recently is that Congress, the congressional study, basically confirms all the conspiracy theories. So all of us that had issues with the vaccine and the COVID mandates that were called conspiracy theorists, now almost everything that we talked about are now being confirmed in a congressional House COVID panel, and they did a 2 year report. And so, of course, we're finding out that it's being confirmed that it originated in Wuhan lab, that this lab was funded by United States sources, that social distancing was not based on science, masks were not based on science, lockdowns were not based on science, and had a lot of damage to both the economy and mental health of people around the globe, and that they overstated the vaccine's effectiveness. They suppressed information, and public health officials were in bed with the narrative. And that's something I just brought up, is the fact that a lot of scientists are basically co-opted. And most Americans and probably citizens around the globe are not really aware of the fact that it's pretty easy to co-opt sections of the scientific community to perpetrate and support the narratives that are put out there by the state. And that can go along with COVID, that can go along with climate change, because what happens is the state basically supports these scientists. They get federal grants, they get federal money to continue their programs and their research, and the government can just cut it off. And so there's a lot of scientists that are co-opted easily that way, and they're more than happy to go along with the government narrative. And then it's really easy, particularly with our co-opted media, for all the scientists who call out all the issues with climate change or vaccines or whatever. They're maligned and they're ridiculed as conspiracy theorists, and it's pretty easy to do. But now, in the so-called post-COVID era, or at least the post-pandemic era, a lot of these scientists are now having their voices heard. And another part of this too is that the judge just recently ruled that Pfizer has to release all their vaccine data. And let's remember that one of the things that was baked in the cake when the vaccine was first released is that Pfizer, Moderna, and all the other vaccine manufacturers demanded that all their data be buried for 75 years. And just like a lot of things we see, that seems to imply that they know they committed basically crimes. They know they are guilty if they don't want any of the internal information to be released until 75 years later. Now we have a judge coming out and ruling that Pfizer needs to release all their vaccine research data, all their information on how they came about with the vaccines, what's in them, etc. And wouldn't you know it, the Biden administration steps in and has extended the COVID emergency declaration to shield big pharma until 2029. And so they're still trying to obstruct this information coming out. So there'll be continuing legal battles, but it is really gratifying to see that on a global level, a lot of the fringe scientists are now finding a voice. We're finding government confirmations of what we've already figured out, and we're also having legal battles that are having this information released, and we may even see in our lifetime the entire fraud of the COVID vaccine and the protocols completely revealed to the public. But of course the damage will already be done, but that's how it works with a lot of these programs where the government's involved. Before it's already too late when you get to the truth, because the damage has already been done, and they pretty much count on that. I'm a useful idiot, don't you be one too?